Please stand for the prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Leary.
Here.
Counsel Mercier.
Here.
Counsel Milonazo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras.
Here.
That's 9 present.
Counsel Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence for Mr. Roy F. White, Jr. Roy White was a Lowell resident and a beloved husband of Phyllis G. Chase White, passed away on Monday, March 13th, surrounded by his family. He was 83 years old, lifelong resident of Lowell. Mr. White was also in the U.S. Armed Services, and he served in the Korean War. Surviving Mr. White, besides his wife Phyllis of 55 years, are his son Stephen and Sherry White, his daughter Kathleen and her husband John Pierce, and his son Ted and Sarah White of Pepperell. He'll be sorely missed. I have one more if you're... I'd like to offer a moment of silence for Mr. Edward M. Ted Cawley. Ted Cawley, 57, passed away on Saturday, April 1st, at his Tewksbury residence. He was the loving husband of Karen M. Souza Cawley, to whom they were married 29 years. Born and raised in Lowell, son of Edward J. and Patricia Reynolds Cawley. Ted was a graduate of Bishop Girton High School and received his BS in management from UMass Lowell in 1981. Ted was heavily involved in Lowell banking community, served as a senior vice president at Lowell 5 for many years, and most recently at Sage Bank. He was active in the community, and he served on many leadership roles on various boards, including past chairs of the Lowell Chamber of Commerce, the House of Hope, Middlesex Community College Foundation, Lowell Plan, and Lowell Development Financial Committee. In addition to his wife Karen, he leaves his 3 children, Daniel and his wife Jennifer. Daniel, Ryan, and Jennifer Cawley, all of Tewksbury, Mass. He'll be sorely missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if we could take, I'd like to suspend the rules and take an item on the City Council agenda out of order, and that would be 9.2.
Second.
Councilor Elliott is asking that we take 9.2 out of order. If there's no objection, then we'll just do that by general consent. Hearing no objection, 9.2 is a motion by Councilor Elliott. Request the City Council recognize Peter Kostelakis for his contributions to restoring mayoral portraits at Lowell City Hall, seconded by Councilor Belanger. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for taking out of order. Mr. Kostelakis is here. I've asked him to join us. Just so we could take an opportunity to thank Peter for all of the work that he has done, not only on the latest portrait that he has restored, but also for many other portraits that he has done at no cost to the city and of his own time, effort, energy, and money. So a picture does tell 1,000 stories or 1,000 words, and I wish the folks at home could see this. because Mr. Kostelakis took a portrait that was ripped, it was torn, it was discolored, and brought it back to what looks like its original condition. So without further ado, I just wanted Peter come too, so people in the city can see who you are and what you do and what you have done. If you don't mind saying a few words, so people at home could recognize you. And on behalf of the city, I just want to thank you for restoring the mayoral portraits, and in the city, the artwork that you do is incredible.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate this very much. Councilor Elliott. The project started several years ago with an article in the Lowell Sun, and the article basically said that they went up in the attic of City Hall and found a dozen or so old portraits in rough condition. And I had emailed the former city manager to see if I could come in and look at one of the paintings. I thought the one that was in the paper, because I thought I recognized the artist, and they didn't list who the artist was. And it did turn out to be her, a woman by the name of Elizabeth Morse Walsh, who was a very important artist to the city of Lowell. And anyway, Henry Marchand emailed me and said that I could come in, but he wanted me to look at a dozen paintings and write them up, say, give a condition report. So I did that on a nice hot summer day. And he told me at the time that they couldn't do any of the portraits right away, but within a couple of days, I did get a call, and they wanted me to do the first city manager, John Flannery. And so I restored that. We ended up getting a frame for it, too. It didn't have a frame. And then the next one was the first mayor, Dr. Bartlett. And then there was Frederick Greenhalgh, who was a mayor in Lowell and also a governor in Massachusetts. And then the one I just brought back was Dr. Huntington. He was mayor 8 times. And now I'm working on Elijah Ayer. And he's not in such bad shape, so I'm hoping it won't be as bad as the other one to work on. But anyway, that's how it started, and I want to thank you again, Councilor Elliott, for the recognition. I want to thank everybody in this room, too. It's very nice
Thank you.
to be recognized. Thank you.
The next item we have is the minutes of the city council meeting from March 28th for acceptance. A motion to accept and place on file by Council Mercia, second by Council Milonazo. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Being before 7 o'clock, we'll skip over the public hearing and go to motion responses from the city manager. We have motion responses A through H. A is the crosswalk request on Plain Street. Any discussion?
Just want to
Council
say thank you for the quick response and the quick review. And I appreciate Mr. Bellegarde taking a look at it and working to at least identify, or not identify, but clean up the one at the corner of Chelmsford and Plain. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item A? If not, we'll move to item B, which is the center line striping schedule. Any discussion? Council Leahy.
No, I just threw you to the manager. Thank you for this report. And it was just, on the bottom, I'm not sure, but I think Gorham Street's included, right, from Moore Street down to the Borica line, I think, is how it reads. Okay, and then just Chelmsford Street, there's bits of that, but that's included too, I would think, right? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, would it be possible to get a crosswalk schedule? Okay, I'd appreciate that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item B? If not, we'll move on to item C, which is the community development grants. Any discussion regarding item C? Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the information from the administration. The talk in Washington, as we all know, is that it could be a $6 billion cut on the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development budget. And we actually were left this evening on our desk some of the programs that could possibly be impacted by some of those cuts. So I'm just wondering if it makes sense, Mr. Mayor, to request that the administration send a letter to our federal delegation, certainly Congresswoman Songus, as well as Senator Warren and Senator Markey, and maybe it makes sense to send a letter to all of the Congress people, all the other 8 in the Commonwealth, just talking about the 4th largest city in Massachusetts and the impact that that type of budget cut would have on our social service programs and on some of our capital projects. So I don't know if I need that in the form of a motion, but I put that in the form of a motion to ask the administration to send a letter to our federal delegation.
Absolutely. So we have a motion by Council Milonazo to send a letter to every member of the delegation, to have the city manager send a letter to every member of the delegation. It's seconded by Council Leary. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, right to you, actually. Is there any effort by the National League of Cities to wage an effort, particularly with this program, block grant program, and as well as any other programs that clearly affect larger cities that are being, impacted and being cut significantly throughout the nation?
You addressing that to me?
To you, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't know that there is one, but I would assume that there is, but I'd be happy to get your information on that for next week.
If there is, I think that, this, by virtue of this motion, we perhaps would like to have you weigh in or write a letter on behalf of the council and the city to let them know what the impact is going to be. So,
Okay, thank you.
friendly amendment to the motion, I suppose.
Okay, Council Leary?
Just real quick, I agree with Council Milonazo in terms of moving this and really opening up a dialogue. This motion ties in nice to what we're going to be talking about later today in Council Elliott's motion about the effect. This effect right here is $3.7 million negative to the city. And that's just the beginning. As we start looking at what, the other motion we'll take up tonight from Councilor Elliott, it's going to be a really strong negative impact, not only to the city side, but the school side. So anything that we can do to muster up some type of really an opposition to it, I think is something we need to do now. And I think Mayor leading that charge would be a positive for us to do that. I'm not sure what the status is, if this is real, or part of it's going to be real. They're not going to be increases, but it will have a very negative financial impact on what we're trying to achieve in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Samaras?
Thank you. Could I also add, could the city manager, in looking over this and the type of money that we're going to lose, could you sort of outline what a type of an impact it could possibly have that we have to face? I know you've started to do that, and you've talked about no hirings for this coming budget, so you've taken a lot of the necessary steps. But if nothing were to be done and the cuts were to remain and less money from the state, it's going to require some serious work. And if you could give us an idea of the impact that would happen, that would help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Elliott.
I was just going to suggest we take out my motion because it is relative and we can dispose of it. I think most of the discussion has taken place not only in the block grant programs, but any other things. So if there's no objection, we can take that motion up, and we pretty much discussed it.
So is the motion speak for itself?
The motion speaks for itself when it comes up, but I guess what I would like, Mr. Manager, and I'm not sure how this will affect organizations like the Career Center or the Workforce Investment Board that perhaps receive federal funding for summer jobs or job training. So I think it's not just a community block grant, but Section 108 loans and some of the other domestic programs that we directly benefit from here.
Okay. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, no, we just listed the amounts. Certainly, we're going to be able to list the impact those cuts would have. We did the 100%. If it's 50%, obviously, you'll be able to do the math, whatever it is. But there are going to be significant effects, especially curb appeal. We've used community development block grant money to do streetscapes, to do the city manager's neighborhood investment program for Couple Square, planning for Bridge Street improvements. This is all CDBG money. You think of even things like the Angor Dance Troupe will lose money under this, and that's a quality of life issue in the city.
And the Senior Center.
And the Senior Center, we will lose the payment, the rental payment, $250,000.
350.
$350,000. So we will do a detailed report on the impact that these cuts will have on individuals in the city.
You all set?
All set, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. On the very last page of this report, on the very last item, it says Lynn Housing Authority and Neighborhood Development Administering Agency for Essex County. What does that have to do with us?
Chris Samaras, could you just, I've asked that question myself, but it's a plausible explanation. Can you-
Okay, Chris Samaras, Community Development Director. About 3 years ago, HUD, us being the largest city, we handle HOPWA funds for Middlesex and Essex County. So we manage or administrate Essex County through the Lynn Housing Authority. So basically, that allocation, we split a certain percentage of the HOPWA funds to Lowell and to Lynn. And this was a directive from HUD about 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
So if there's a cut in that aspect, we're not responsible for Lynn.
No, not at all. Just that percentage. We just allocate that percentage to them, and they handle the allocations themselves. They administer them to their programs.
That's fine, thank you.
Any further discussion on item C? Okay, then, if there's no objection, Council Elliott has asked that we take item 9.1 out of order. So if there's, we'll do that by general consent. If there's no objection, hearing no objection, Council, 9.1 is a motion by Council Elliott requesting the city manager provide a report regarding federal funding loss due to cuts, noting the impact of staff as well as the number of people in the community affected by the cuts. Seconded by Council Belanger. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? All opposed? So voted. Next, we'll go to item D, which is the First Street corridor illegal dumping. Any discussion? Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, I want to thank you for making this a priority and acknowledging that this has been a long-standing problem for some time. I mean, there's problems all over the city, but this one is really prominent. The dumping, it just makes the city look horrible. It falls with the topography. The land, it just falls on down to the boulevard. It's all lined with trash, and in the winter, it looks horrible. So I appreciate you acknowledging that and taking necessary steps. I see you brought out a contractor from the state to look at the issue, give it a real hard look with camera surveillance and other barriers that may take place. Can you brief the council, please, as to potential next steps?
I'd ask Eric Slagle to do that if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Mayor, through you to the council. The First Street corridor, as Council Belanger had mentioned, has been a problem. We do have a series of video cameras, battery-operated video cameras that we do rotate at sites throughout the city, but also sites including First Street. I do know that the police department, who is the entity that's contacted the consultant, have been looking at a more permanent solution that would involve cameras that aren't battery operated, that are permanent cameras at locations to try and prevent the dumping. So I do think that that's a good step. Hopefully, the conjunction of the permanent video cameras at the worst dumping spots and the sanitary code enforcement staff putting the battery operated cameras at times in other trouble spots will allow us to proceed with some enforcement that we can then make public. We can, try to get the stories out to the newspaper, perhaps get these people in front of the district court and generate some publicity about enforcement, which I think would go a long way towards discouraging that sort of dumping in the future. That's our hope.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slagle. If you can keep this council abreast as to the situation there, but this has been a long-standing problem, we all know, and it certainly warrants a permanent solution. I mean, this moving cameras temporarily obviously has not done the trick. So we need something on a more permanent basis to stop this, because it's a major gateway and the city looks horrible. So something's got to happen here. So please keep us in tune with the so-called improvements that will take place. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Council. Council Leahy.
Thank you. Through you to the manager. As we we know this is a problem site. I did see Sheriff Katusian out the other night, and he said he'd be willing to, work with us to maybe get the corrections office involved and help us clean out the trash. I didn't know if we could touch base. There's a lot of dead wood in there, and I don't know if it's, the decay is good for the environment and all that stuff, which it is, but it really could use a good clean out too. Just besides the garbage, there's a lot of dead trees that could slide down into the road. So whatever we could angle we could work at to get it cleaned out this spring, with whatever departments, overtime from our guys, anybody, but just, if we could even get it cleaned out. I mean, there was talk about a fence at one time, and I don't know if that's still happening, but, so anything we can do would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion on this item? If not, we'll move on to item E, which is the fiscal year 2018 budget timeline. Any discussion?
Just real quick, thank you for the response, I apologize. I guess looking at it, the charter schools are again $2 million. I mean, that's, when do you foresee that be leveling off, or is that something we anticipate as an annual increase?
Through you, Mr.
That's
Mayor.
actual cash, by the way, too, it's not,
It's been, over the last 5 or 6 years, the gap between the assessment and the reimbursement from the state has grown. So it's been a pretty steady trend of increasing costs in the neighborhood of net $2 million each year. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
okay, no, I appreciate that, I didn't think so. So I appreciate getting the timely response. I guess ultimately, you've been planning for this with the department, that you're looking at a 3% increase on the overall budget, but it's still pretty tight, because some of that's obviously goes to the collective bargaining, goes to ultimately the charter school, goes to different, the health insurance, what have you. But I appreciate you being proactive with it, and we'll be taking that up in the next month or so, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to Connor Baldwin again. Connor, the snow and ice deficit, now, we still carry one more year on the amortization of the 2015 winter, correct? To the tune of, I think, $500,000. And what are we over in 2016 and 17? As we all know, late season storms don't help like we had last week. So where are we with the snow and ice deficit?
So the city was able to make that third payment in the 3-year amortization plan a little bit less than the $500,000. So that's about $138,000 from the 2015 storm. But right now, based on the cost that we have projected, it's about a $2 million deficit for the fiscal year 17 snow and ice deficit. Now, that's as we sit here today. We'll try to balance out that deficit with any surpluses we have before the end of the year to try to bring that down. Ideally, we'd like to carry less forward to the next year as much as possible.
Correct, okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on this item? If not, we'll move on to item F, which is the trash barrel enforcement. Any discussion on item F? Councilor Leahy.
Thank you, through you to the manager. This is just one of the hot button issues going on in the neighborhoods now. So I appreciate the report. It shows protocol, what we're gonna do. Few people I've talked to think we're a little bit lax on this, but let's start out with the plan. As you initiate it, let's go through the neighborhoods, warn them, and then start ticketing. But I can see that, we're out in the neighborhoods now, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Trash day in my neighborhood is Thursday. On my Sunday morning walk, I walked by a red trash can on Stevens Street with no warning sign on it or anything. On the bus trip Monday with the representatives by EOA, I saw 3 trash cans on Westford Street that were still out from the previous Thursday. We had a meeting today with Gunther Wellenstein. Is Gunther here? He was supposed to be here, but whatever. We're not going to stand for it anymore. We're going to put warnings on immediately. We're not going to do 3 warnings as they've been doing in the past. We'll do 1 warning, and then we'll go to a fine because it's just gotten out of control.
No, that's good to hear. This comes up all the time at the neighborhood meetings, and I'm glad to hear you say that. So enough's enough, and thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Elliott.
Why don't we just take their barrels, and then they have to come down? I'm serious. After the first time, they get a warning. They don't, they don't take their barrel in, take it, make it, they have to come and get it at City Hall and pay the fine. I mean, this is, it's like civic responsibility 101. The city pays for the barrels. They're expensive, and there's a process, and it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, we all see it, and it's unfortunate because trash collection has gone from a messy, poor collection process to rather orderly, in my opinion, and that's the way it should be. So, I don't know if we can't do that, but it's sort of tongue in cheek. But by the same token, if they don't have a barrel, they'll kind of be in compliance. But we probably can't do that.
Thank you.
Well, knowing them as scofflaws, they'll probably just throw them out in bags on the sidewalk, and
Yeah,
that would be
up in
even
First
worse.
Street.
So I think let's start with this really aggressive enforcement and make sure that they
Right.
get the message loud and clear.
Any further discussion on trash barrels? If
All right,
not,
I'll
we'll
take
move
the
on
trash
to the Luz building update. Any discussion on the Luz building update? Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, thanks for this second follow-up. This is a second motion response you've given to this council. I appreciate it because it's an important parcel that sits right in front of the Butler School. And it's not a good example for the city, for the residents, and for these kids to see this day in and day out. So please, something needs to happen here. It is a dilapidated, boarded-up building, unsafe, and something needs to happen, being in front of a school especially. So please keep your necessary departments on top of this issue and let the council know how we progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? If not, we'll move on to active shooter protocol. Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the manager. Mr. Manager, without getting, I know it's a 25-page report, and it's pretty explicit and goes through every possible scenario. Without getting into everything, all the details, you're confident that if unfortunately the worst does happen, that the city is best prepared to deal with that?
Oh, absolutely. I've witnessed the training that the police department goes through with different scenarios, and this just shows, I think the good thing about this report is they did this exercise and they learned lessons from it that they're going to incorporate into their protocols in the future. So I'm fully confident that the police department, Superintendent Taylor is here if you had any questions of him.
No, not necessarily,
Okay,
just the
but-
fact that, all emergency services are incorporated with fire, police, local hospital, EMT services. So I think it's again, if the worst does happen, the city's in good shape to deal with that. Thank you.
Yeah, and George Rose does a terrific job. With having monthly meetings at the EOC to make sure that all the plans are in place. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Samaras.
No, I just want to thank the chief for this report. It's nice to know that how far we've gone in making sure that our children are safe, or all our people are safe. Chief Taylor, could you just talk about, as an example, what you demonstrated about the high school using students as an example?
Yes.
Because I think being that dramatic, it really does help everybody to think what the process should be, and you've identified the sources that people should go to. It's so important, because at one time, that we had an idea of what to do, but really not to be well organized and thought out like this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Samaras. Recently, as the report indicates, during February school vacation, we did an extensive 5-day training, and we ran most of our police officers through a component of active shooter training there. And we do our active shooter training in conjunction with the school department. It's a good opportunity for the police department, the school department to work together to make sure that the schools across the city are as safe as they possibly can be. And I think the report details how we view the schools in the city as really a safe, where we as a community keep our most precious commodity, as children. And so you can see the detail with which the school resource officers go through that training. Twice a year, they do a very comprehensive option-based emergency training protocol with every school in the city. So that means every school in the city, including the high school, twice a year. They go through an option-based training model where the school and the school resource officers and the staff in the school and the students go through things like a soft lockdown, a hard lockdown, evacuation drills, staging points. We certainly don't want to get into the details of that from a tactical consideration. In February, what we did was we used the high school, the freshman academy, to do a comprehensive training where we ran teams of police officers, not just Lowell police officers, but the model now is to actively engage any active shooter immediately with a small team of officers, literally any officers you can get from other communities, from the university, from the park service in the city. So we put together small groups of contact teams. They go in, they try and deal with the immediate threat. Then the other team comes behind them and tries to deal with victims, and then there's other teams that come in after that. So that was really a comprehensive training. You can see the report details how it involved obviously the police department, the school department, emergency management in the city, Trinity Ambulance, Lowell General Hospital was involved. As a matter of fact, they took a leadership role in one particular day that we did a very much a comprehensive training with our regional law enforcement council, NIMLAC, which provides SWAT team and things like that. So I think it was, I was there, I went through the training, witnessed it with many of our officers. I thought it was very good. We did use dozens of students from the ROTC program and other components in the school to be role actors in that scenario-based training. And so I think the students got an eye-opening experience about how it works, and they were critical to the success of the training program.
No, I want to thank you for that. I mean, because it's true. I mean, by having teachers involved, administrators involved, the students actually involved, I mean, this gives a very good, sometimes the students will go home and explain what happened in school to their parents, and sometimes I found parents would get a little upset or frightened by the process. Mm-hmm. But I think this explanation shows clearly to everybody that's watching how effective we are in doing this. And I do know from past experience that when other groups came in, they always complimented the Lowell force for what was being taught and how things were being handled. So you and your men are to be commended. Thank you for doing this and making our children safe.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion? Thank you, Chief. If not, that concludes the motion responses from the City Manager. Chair would entertain a motion to accept the motion response and place them on file by Councilor Milanazzo, second by Councilor Mercia. Discussion on the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Being shortly after 7 o'clock, we'll open the, Councilor Mercia.
Mr. Mayor, could I suspend the rules and allow a talk about this issue of the robocall that everybody was calling me and coming up to me about this incident that happened on Friday evening?
Is that on the agenda?
No. I suspended the rules.
Councilor Mercia was asking to suspend
Second.
the rules and on talk about robocalls. If there's no objection, we'll do it by general consent. Hearing no objection, Councilor Mercia.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager. I happen to hear from quite a few people about the robocall that went out into effect on Friday night between 11:30 at night and 11:45, telling them that they have to keep their cars off the road. And people were awakened thinking something happened to their loved one, so it was kind of frightening for them. So if we could get an understanding and hoping that this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Yes, basically what happened is that at Friday afternoon, we knew we were going to be putting a parking ban in at midnight. And we want to alert everybody because we have to tow cars to allow the opportunity for the plows to do their proper job. Due to human error, the robocall didn't go out. And then when it was discovered that later on that evening that the robocall didn't go out, they decided to send out the robocall. Unfortunately, it was at 11:15 in the evening, and I know what I think when I get a call at 11:15 evening. It was unconscionable. I've already discussed it with them. I can understand human error, but you've got to think after you make a human error, and to send the robocall out at 11:15, 11:30 was totally unconscionable, and I guarantee it will never happen again.
Well, I hope it doesn't, because it was a female voice, and a lot of the callers thought it was me, and it wasn't. So Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, then we'll go to the public hearing, and we'll begin with the second reading. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 266 entitled Vehicles and Traffic. We'll open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, close the hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up to those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Opposition, opposition, in opposition. Hearing none, we'll close the hearing. For those who wish to speak in opposition, open up to the City Council. The Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Motion to approve by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Councilor Belanger.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Leary.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
Councilor Samaras.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
That's the only public hearing that we have this evening. Moving on to item 4.2 is a communication. The city manager requests out-of-state travel for one person in the Lowell Police Department. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Rourke to approve. Councilor Elliott.
Is the chief still here? I just had a question. We're sending one officer, and that's not my question, but, so this is to go to Arizona to speak to the mid-size agencies division mid-year meeting, and we've invited to speak about the 21st Century Policing Initiative. Can you just, in 30 seconds, give a brief description of what that is?
I'll be brief.
And who do you send to do this? Because I'm thinking maybe they want to be sent out to the neighborhoods as well.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Elliott. This is going to be Captain Tim Crowley is going to go. Very proud that the Lowell Police Department was selected of one of 15 communities across the country to help implement 21st century policing, the President's task force, back several months ago. So that's an incredible, acknowledgement of how good we are at doing community policing and in the various community engagements. So as part of that, we have been designated as one of the 15 communities that will mentor other communities. So we've been invited from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, who is working in conjunction with the Justice Department on this, to come out and tell them how we've been going along this, our process, our progress that we've been making, and they're providing all the funds. So it's a really good opportunity for us to, do an exchange of ideas.
That is good news. The letter didn't put it in those terms, so it's good to know, and it's good to let the people know exactly that our model is being replicated throughout the country. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Not, roll call.
Councilor Belanger.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Leary.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
Councilor Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have a vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Sweet Journey Incorporated to encroach upon the City of Lowell property at 30 Central Street in Lowell, Massachusetts. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading, authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Sweet Journey Incorporated to encroach upon the City of Lowell property at 30 Central Street in Lowell, Massachusetts. Do we have a motion to approve? By Councilor Rourke, second by Councilor Samaras. Discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Councilor Belanger.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Leary.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
Councilor Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to transfer the amount of $47,191.60 in funds to provide for an appraisal and title work relative to the Tiger Bridge project. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading to transfer the amount of $47,191.60 in funds to provide appraisal and title work relative to the Tiger Bridge project. We have a motion to approve by Councilor Belanger, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Councilor Belanger.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Leary.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
Councilor Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have pursuant to Chapter 266 in the Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading. Pursuant to Chapter 266 in the Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Milonazo, second by Counsel Rourke. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, the city manager is requesting approval for constable bonds for Emma Amaro, Stephen Formaro, Juan Garcia, Juan Jerez, Delilah Ruiz, Gerald Sewell, Kevin Whippen, and Douglas Wiggins Jr. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Rourke, second by Counsel Leary. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, under subcommittee reports, we have a report from the Finance Subcommittee of April 3rd, 2017. Counsel Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Finance Subcommittee met last night to discuss four significant items, may I add. We met at 6 p.m. In the City Council chamber. 4 items that were discussed were net school spending for FY16, FY17, refunding of bonds and the budgetary savings that were accumulated as a result. We discussed the FY16 audit management letter. And the last item was we discussed the debt exclusion on the Lowell High School project. It was a lengthy meeting, but I'll try to recap without too much detail. First item, net school spending. Should be noted that for the last 3 years, we have exceeded our net school spending requirement to the Lowell Public Schools and our support of funding education. This year, the amount that the city projects and with all confidence approved by the Department of Revenue, we will exceed our net school spending limit by $8,053,454. So that's good news. It's positive news, knowing that that education is important in the city and that we continue to support it. Our maintenance of effort, we continue to maintain and I suppose sharpen our counting on those items. But if there's no questions from my colleagues, then we'll move on. But that was just an update as to where we have been and where we are. Mr. Manager, anything else to add moving forward for, I guess the only item to note, question by, I think it was Council Leary or Council Milonazo, that what is our commitment for this year? And we are again increasing our commitment, our cash commitment from the city side of $3 million. So, Mr. Manager, anything to add on, add on that?
Yes, actually, the total increase will be $3 million over last year's budget. They do have some expenses, like we have expenses that have gone up, but we expect them to absorb those expenses within the funds that we're giving them for their operating budget.
So next item was on the agenda was refunding of bonds, and this is good news, and this is a policy that the administration has done, continues to do, and that is looking at those loan orders, those bond authorizations that have already been awarded, but before we reach the call date, right, Mr. Bone, before we reach the call date, we have an opportunity to refund them. And because of our Standard & Poor rating, because we have a AA minus, that's a good thing. So we have the opportunity to refund at a lower rate. That's what the city has done. That's what we continue to do. And as a result of the refunding of bonds, there's a total net savings of $611,543. So that's just again, a report of progress as we continue to refinance and look ways to save money. And that's a good amount of money to save on our debt service. So if there's no question, we'll move on to the third item, which was the audit letter, the management letter. The auditor was also in attendance, along with Councilor Mercy and Councilor Samaras were in attendance, along with the financial staff. And the audit letter, there have been some outstanding items, particularly with cash reconciliation on a monthly basis. It's being done currently by an Excel spreadsheet. That is going to change very shortly, next couple of months. I can't recall from the meeting last night, Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Auditor. And the change is going to be that we're implementing a module with Munis that will automate this process and allow the auditor and the CFO to reconcile on a more timely basis. Who wants to jump in?
Well, I'll just start if that's all right. We have a projected go-live date of the 15th of June, which will allow us to begin the monthly reconciliation process in Munis in our financial reporting software by the end of this fiscal year. So we'll be able to wrap up this year, begin the next year clean, and start moving forward, reconciling monthly from within our financial system, beginning in FY18.
Okay. There are some other items to note in the report, but basically it's a good audit report. The reconciliation, the cash reconciliation is the major item. Still working on fixed assets, which is GASB 34, which has been implemented over a number of years. I think the only other item of discussion was the numerous bank accounts that the city is working to close out. And just for the viewers at home, there are 450 bank accounts. Is that right?
There's essentially over 500 different fund accounts that we have.
Fund accounts.
Correct.
And how many special revenue or fund is that up to?
I don't have the specific numbers
Okay.
on exactly special revenue, but the vast majority are other grant funds or special revenue funding.
And, that's good. I know the prior administration tried to narrow this down and reduce the number. Some of them have to be left open as a result of their grants or their loan orders or their bonds. So we don't want to get into too much of the weeds in that, but I think they're working to resolve that, and that's a good thing. I just want to make note of it. Other than that, that's a report of progress as well. And the last item was a motion from Council Leary regarding providing an outline of the Prop 2.5 debt exclusion. The committee and members who attended got into a healthy discussion, an informative discussion on exactly what debt exclusion is, but more importantly, the debt that we currently have, what is coming off the books, what will remain on the books, both long and short term, and what effect that will have on the Lowell High School finance. And there'll be more discussion on that to come. Certainly some of the schools that we have paid will be paid by the time we go out, but we still have some long-term outstanding obligations on some of the schools, the Saclosa, the Maury, and other schools as well. So I think that's a recap of the meeting that took place. It was a good report by you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Conley, as well as the auditor. It's all available. I believe it's online for people that want to take a look at it, but it's more in-depth discussion and analysis of these, what I think are, this is the bread and butter of the city when it comes to finances. So good news all the way around. Report of progress, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? I just have one question. Is it the subcommittee's intention to have a recommendation on whether or not debt exclusion it would be appropriate for funding of the high school project? And if so, when would they do that, given that there's a ballot deadline for doing that? So was there discussion about that?
Mr. Mayor, there was no discussion. The motion was, the motion that we did discuss was just the process of the debt exclusion process. But if there's a motion, if there's a desire for the subcommittee to do that, sure, we would welcome the opportunity to have that discussion. No, I mean, we're happy to do it.
Just, as a maker of the motion, I
Councilor.
guess the question is, what is the deadline if we were to go that route? I think one of the things, we had a really lengthy discussion, regarding how the entire debt structured. We didn't really get into making any recommendations at this point. One, because we don't have a recommendation for a location or the final price on it. But I guess we do, a good point is, what is the deadline if we decide to go to the debt exclusion, if that's something we choose to do?
My deadline, my understanding is August 9th would have to have everything in place by August 9th to get it on the ballot in November.
Okay. But I don't think we made any, we didn't get into that. We really were talking about really a lot of that information and looking at also what type of projects were actually coming offline. I think that was a large part of the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this? We have a motion, we set this as a report of progress by Council Elliott, seconded by Council Leary. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next subcommittee report is from the Economic Development Subcommittee for April 4th, 2017. Council Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Tonight, the Subcommittee on Economic Development met with Councilor Milanazzo and Councilor Leary. Also present were Councilor Mercia, Belanger, and Rourke. Ted Panis was here representing his family along with Tim Grover. They spoke of building a 5-story boutique hotel at the location of the Athenian Corner. They talked about how each floor will represent a neighborhood in the city and depict its history of each neighborhood. The one thing that they felt strongly about was that it was going to be a locally owned hotel, locally managed hotel, and not part of a franchise. They talked about having function rooms, rooms that could take care of small weddings or small meetings that would be good for the city. They also talked about the economic impact, and they said over a 3-year period between the meals tax, room tax, and property tax, they estimated that there'd be $896,889 to the city coffers. Along with that, they talked about lease parking in a 3-year period would bring in over $101,000. They were pleased with they showed a basically modern design. A question was asked, because they're in the historic district, wouldn't they actually build a replication of a historic building? And they said in dealing with the different groups, historic groups, they felt it's better to build a modern building that meets and is complementary to the historic buildings. And they've done that. They've met all aspects of the various groups that they have to meet before. They've talked about 24-hour security. They talked about valet parking. They talked about meeting a lot of needs that we've talked about in Lowell, and this will be an excellent addition to the downtown. So we're very pleased with what they're attempting to do, and they've got our support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? We have a motion by Councilor Samaras to accept the report of the Economic Development Subcommittee's report of progress, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Discussion. All in favor or all opposed, so voted. Next, Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While we're under subcommittees, I would just like to inform my colleagues that on Wednesday, March 29th, I brought the motion by Councilor Elliott over to the Board of Parks, which talked about to find a space for the Latino community, and we did over at Cumanzelis Park, and they wanted to name their particular field that we have for them, Roberto Clemente Field, and I brought over the vote of the subcommittee and the whole council as a whole, and the Board of Parks supported it unanimously. I just wanted to let everybody know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a report from the Wire Inspector, National Grid, requesting permission to install an underground line of electric conduits, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures to service the Hamilton Canal District. We have a motion to accept and adopt the accompanying order. by Councilor Samara, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, moving on to City Council motions. The next motion of the evening is by Councilor Elliott, request that the city manager to the City Council vote to place a ballot referendum question on Lowell High School, the Lowell High School building project, and discuss the question, do you support funding the Lowell High School building project? Second by Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion is worded in a particular way so that there can be discussion on the question itself, because I know the question is what goes on the ballot. I know there are two issues that have concerned my colleagues and certainly many others in the city that have been actively involved. One, the timing, and two, is this a responsibility of city councilors? And I don't disagree that timing is an issue. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. In my opinion, until we take a final vote in December on a loan authorization or on the design, or even moving forward at any level in the process, that we still have the opportunity and people should have the chance to weigh in. Why did I file it now? Why wasn't it filed, months ago, maybe even last year? No, Council Belanger filed a motion, I believe last July, for the November election, and it was too late. I don't have all the answers to that, but what I do know is that this project has changed dramatically since its original estimate of $250 million, I would say about a year ago, closer to another $100 million or more. So I do understand it is our responsibility as city councilors. I've heard the argument, and I understand that. I don't have any issue with it, but this is, to me, this is a project that there is still time to put it on the ballot, and we should be letting the people who are going to pay the bills weigh in on it. There's been very good debate on both sides. I think lots of issues has been raised, and it's made all of us look at the options more closely. And some people say it's too late, and I accept their concern and their reason for it. But to me, I think this debate will go on there further, certainly right until November. And there have been so many issues, sometimes distractions, that people that have been engaged. I think it's very good, but there are still many people who have not. And they've not been part of the discussion, and I think that's the taxpayers, the people who pay the bills, and they should be given an opportunity to weigh in. And one way to do that certainly is to elect the city councilors, but this issue wasn't before us 2 years ago when we ran for the city council. There was very little mention of any, if I can remember, on a new Lowell High School, certainly not the cost that we're talking about now. And a project of this magnitude, to me, warrants the opinion of people. It's an unprecedented project with an unprecedented expenditure that will inevitably have an impact on taxes and taxpayers. So I would say, why wouldn't we ask their opinion? Why would, if we're asking them to pay for it? So are we too far in the game? I don't think so. I understand the arguments on both sides that we are. It's too late. Nobody had any idea we still don't have any idea on location nor cost, which I think that could be put on the ballot when it goes forward. And I personally think we educate the public, the taxpayers, on what this means. We have to do something. The school is in disrepair. There's a concern that we will not meet accreditation if we don't make improvements, and that's part of the education process that I feel that we have to propose and put forward to voters. So let me also just state, because I've heard concern that this is an attempt to derail the project. It is far from that. I couldn't disagree more. This is not an attempt to derail this project. We're elected to vote our conscience, and my conscience is to include the people in a vote of this, like many other communities. I want to say most, but I don't know all. but I know most communities do. More often than not, it's a debt override exclusion. I understand that.
Are you all set?
No, I'm not. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. And again, we've been focused, to me at least, we've been focused on so many other issues that have surfaced in the last few months that we've not to discuss about putting this on the ballot, and that's why I do feel is the time. Is it the right time? Am I shirking my responsibilities? Absolutely not. I'm not afraid to make this vote. I just think it's important that we include everyone in the city. Look, I live in a quiet neighborhood, and I have a high school in my backyard. It's the Greater Lowell Voc. And, there are 200 students that go there. There are hundreds of cars that travel through my neighborhood daily. To me, I think it's important that we ask the voters beforehand, let them know what it's for, and I think that they would support it. I firmly do. So I will end there. I just say let's not be afraid to let the people vote. This is not a measure to kill it. I firmly do not believe that people will not vote for this, and it's our job to inform the public. We owe it to the people. I believe I have faith in them, and I that's just how I feel. That I think it's important that we include them. So. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I am done.
Thank you, Council. We have two registered speakers, so we'll take the registered speakers first.
Lynn Daly.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Lynn Daly. My family and I have resided at 35 Windward Road for 55 years. I am here tonight as a taxpayer to discuss Councilor Elliott's motion. The first part of his motion request City Council vote to place ballot referendum question on Lowell High School building project. It might be helpful to the taxpayers to understand what the results of the vote will be based on, such as majority vote, simple majority, or 2/3 majority. The second part of his motion, do you support funding Lowell High School building project? I do support funding a Lowell High School building project. I am also aware that in April of 2013, the city prepared a comprehensive facilities assessment and master plan, which included 29 Lowell school facilities, elementary, middle, PK through 8, high, alternative, day, and the Adult Education Center. This facilities assessment identified school facilities needing critical maintenance, renovation and additions, and/or building assessments. The following facilities were identified: Lowell High School, addition, demolition, renovation; Wang, Daly, and Robinson Middle Schools, additions and renovations; Rogers School, PK through 8, addition, renovation, conversion; one new PK through 8 facility; major and minor repairs of 23 other school facilities. To me, this adds up to a lot of hard-earned taxpayer money for well-deserving students today and well into the future. Currently, the MSBA is reviewing 4 Lowell High School building project options. All 4 options meet all of the education requirements for Lowell school students. The 4 options had to meet all of the education requirements because if the 4 options did not meet the education requirements, the City Council would not have voted to submit the 4 options to the MSBA. With regards to Lowell High as a taxpayer, I hope the City Council concentrates on 2 things. The city runs on a budget. Lowell High is one of many, at least 28, very expensive projects facing the school system and the taxpayers. Number 2, involvement with the MSBA with regards to Lowell High School is specific to reimbursable funding. With that said, option 4, the Colley site, is the most expensive option for the taxpayer, upfront and in annual operating costs. The MSBA is like a bank, and will want to fund an option the city can sustain. As a taxpayer, I do support a Lowell High School building project. As a taxpayer, I do not support Lowell High School building project option 4, the Colley site. The taxpayers should know that with regards to the first part of Councilor Elliott's motion, it is doubtful that you will have an input on a ballot referendum question. With regards to the second part of Councilor Elliott's motion, it is my understanding that Councilor Elliott voted to send 4 Lowell High School building options to the MSBA because all 4 options meet the education requirements for the students today and well into the future. Councilor Elliott, again, it's my understanding, claims to be a fiscal watchdog for the city. I hope this includes the taxpayers and all of the students. Councilor Elliott supports option 4, the Colley site, the most expensive option, upfront and in annual operating costs. This does include the taxpayers and all of the students in the city of Lowell, currently and in the future. Councilor Elliott, while in his role as school committee chair, submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA in April of 2014, which states, "There is only one high school in Lowell made up of multiple buildings. It is at the center of the city. There is overwhelming support to keep it in the city center for a number of reasons, including it is a historical building, one unified school is important to school pride, busing to multiple locations is reduced as there is a city bus system used by many students. Location near UMass Lowell and the city municipal buildings brings opportunities for the students and the education. The urban presence of the school adds to the pride of the city. Parking for students and teachers is simplified by city parking garages, and building a new school for 3,900 students is cost prohibitive. In closing, it is imperative that you, the taxpayers, let your city councilors know that you are not in favor of option 4, the Colley site. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Christine Hungate.
Hi, my name is Christine Hungate. My discussion isn't directly related to the what was brought forth right now, but it is about keeping the idea of keeping the Lowell High downtown in everybody's mind. I brought each of the counselors a document today to put out by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The Trust for Historic Preservation is based in Washington, D.C., and its objective is to protect and preserve America's diverse history, and this includes saving its heritage. The document is titled, "Why Johnny Can't Walk to School: Historic Neighborhood Schools in the Age of Sprawl." Its focus is to alert the public to various threats to irreplaceable landmark neighborhood schools. Within this document, there are many references that validate the sincere concerns expressed by those who feel it is important that Lowell High stay downtown. Some of the topics addressed include the assumption that old is automatically bad and new is automatically good, school locations that rule out possibilities of walking to school, the role of walking to school in the nationwide obesity problem in children, school construction built to last versus new construction with a shorter lifespan, schools as community anchors, the presence of schools, community centeredness, and the key effects on the economic viability of a neighborhood. It references a national report reflecting the wisdom of leading educators, stating that studies show students do better in environments in which the school is central to the life and learning of the community. The document also mentions that stressful drives through traffic separate parents and children from the more distant schools. Distance weakens the ties that once brought people together. Migration of schools adds to the dismemberment of communities. preservation of community-centered schools that have severed older neighborhoods that have served older neighborhoods for generations could continue to do so for many years to come with proper maintenance and upgrading. Young people need independence, and the negative toll of distances too far to walk or bike on families, particularly in regards to afternoon activities. It even addresses the very real fears parents may have about speaking out against a new build for fear of retribution. There's also a guide available to help communities come to a well-informed decision when it comes to the possibility of moving the location of their school. The content of this document should be part of the conversation throughout the city. Anyone interested can access it by Googling "Why Johnny Can't Walk to School." Thank you. I have some copies here for the counselors. Thank you. Here's one more.
Thank you. Council Leary.
The first speaker reminds me that that was my motion back in April 2013 that we voted on, or at least what was addressed. That's how long this project, and actually it's longer. I think Mayor Kennedy, when you were a counselor, we referenced this a couple meetings before. It really started from looking at the disrepair of various buildings, not just the high school. So it actually started sometime in 2012. So we're already 4 years into it, and back then we thought the cost was going to be $250 million. So just to round the numbers up, it's about $100 million more at this point. I respect my colleague's motion. I have, nothing but respect for Councilor Elliott and his position. I just don't agree with it. I think we need to take a stand at this point and make a decision. And yes, it's going to be a challenging vote to take because it will increase everybody's taxes no matter which location you decide upon. Frankly, we probably should have done this 15 years ago when it would have cost $150 million. That's a lot of money, and it was hard to do it at that point in time. So, if it didn't pass, we would have to wait another 4 or 5 years to begin it again, and that would just cost more. And we need to do it now. We can't wait 4 or 5 years to begin the project over, because it could be a decade. Again, I respect what Councilor Elliott's saying, because you're right, it does have a direct impact. It's challenging to reach everybody. I think we're trying to do that as best we can to get opinions on it. We're not perfect. We started off pretty slow, but I think we're ramping up. And I think most of the dialogue, that I've heard from people who have emailed me or called me or people that I run into, it's been pretty positive in terms of, their opinion, whether they agree with what I believe in or don't believe in. So for that area, I think we need to do it. When the Greater Lowell technical costs came up, yes, the costs were substantially less, but we just did it. And it was a good thing to do when you took that vote, because it was important to do not only for the students that go to Greater Lowell Tech, the direct impact, but for the economic viability of the Greater Lowell area. And I think the same with the high school. It's that important. It's more important than sitting here talking about it. It's the most important thing that we're going to do. But I do respect the motion. I understand it. It's not a bad motion or a bad thing. I just have a difference of opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia, then Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a different approach here, and I do respect the maker of the motion. I think the world of him. We disagree on this particular motion. And the motion is, do you support funding Lowell High School, the building project? Do you support that? That's like human nature when you say to someone, I'm going to raise your taxes. Do you mind me doing that? What do you think the public is going to say? No, I don't want my taxes raised. I don't want to pay more taxes. This is the thing that makes me leery of putting it on a referendum question, because I think the people in this room are very, very active one way or another. They know the issue. They're going to vote for it one way or another. I think if I poll this room here, the people here would say, sure, I'd like to support it. But the average person out in the street that doesn't follow and know that we spent well over $1 million in preparation in management, in Sanska, in Perkins Eastman. We spent a lot of money, and I'm not prepared to take away everything that we've put into it so far just to say, well, let's have the voters decide. I personally feel for the voters. I wish I could say, yes, I'll make this motion, and then if it doesn't pass, I could say to the public, gee, I supported you, but my colleagues didn't support it. I don't like to be thrown under the bus. I think we have to step up to the plate and make a decision. I'm not going to kick the can down the road and wait for many years to come and say, you know, they didn't want to pay for it years ago, so we're going to do it now. The reimbursement rate will probably be 15%. Who knows? We will pay maybe 20%. We'll pay 80%. Their reimbursement would be 20%. I can't take that gamble. I'm not a gambler. I'm thinking about human nature and how that is going to affect people's. This plan will be wiped out. Whether it's at Lowell High School downtown or Lowell High School at Collie, one way or another, we need this. And we need strong people that say, I know you're going to hurt, but we have to do it. I remember people saying to me, I'm not going to support funding Lowell High School, no matter where it is. I don't have any children anymore in the Lowell school system. How selfish is that when many years ago someone was in your position that paid for your children to go to school, and their children were already grown up, so now it's your turn. I'm thinking about many years ago when I lived on Royal Street, and it was a beautiful summer's day, and I heard the kids out on the street. They were playing ball, and they were making such a racket. It was going right through my head. I said, oh, my God. Then I stopped and took a step back, and I said, many years ago, those kids making the noise out in the street, those were my children. So I had a different aspect, different approach, saying, well, these were my children years ago. I have to listen to somebody else's now. That's the same situation with the way that people don't want to pay today because their children are all grown up. That's not the way to look at it. And these are the people that might go to vote and say, I'm not going to vote for more taxes. I'm not going to spend my money on refurbishing or building a new school. So I really can't support this motion. I think the world of the maker of the motion. I just really wish that it was not on this agenda this evening. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Samaras. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Okay, you know, when you think about the high school, Councilor Leary spoke about around 2012 or 2010. I know in 2009, I had a group together to look at the building of a new high school at that time. In fact, Adam Backey and his crew did an outline showing what you could do about just refurbishing or building the high school. If you recall, at the time, Lawrence High School had just been completed. They had a cost overrun at $110 million. So we could have built the new high school at the time for at least $120 million, but it was pushed aside as not at this particular time. So a few years later, if you think about it, we're now talking $250,000 plus. 5 years down the road, we talk $500 million plus. It just goes on and on. So basically, I just can't vote for this motion at this time. And my reasoning would be simple. We really are in the final hours of making a decision as to what site we'll choose. And as Councilor Mercia pointed out, we have literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money to make the studies, or to conduct those studies. None of that money is reimbursed to us, especially if we don't go and build the high school. We've asked many questions about this. Also, there are many of our citizens have been a participant in this process, many of them have expressed what site they want to be at. Actually, if somebody asked me one day, does it bother you that people are, fighting for certain sites? I'm excited by the fact that people are fighting for a site for the high school, be it downtown, be it Colley Stadium, that they want the best for their children and they want to do the right thing. And that's what this is about. My point, my feeling, my feeling at this point, my judgment, and I respect the judgment of all of my colleagues, but myself, I can't vote at this time in the 10th hour of decision-making to put this off. Because all what I see us doing now is just exacerbating the situation by putting it off more months, and it's just, the price is just gonna go further up, to a point where we really can't deal with it. So the thing is, I just, in a sense, I won't support this motion. You know, and one thing we have to accept as city councilors, we were elected to make the hard choices. And sometimes it's easier to say, well, we'll give it to our constituents and let them make the decision. But they put us in to make the decision. And we'll be making a hard decision, not based on emotion or feelings. We're gonna make the decision on a lot of work, a lot of research, and a lot of input from a lot of people. So win, lose, or draw, and you know, when you talk about a referendum, every 2 years, there's a referendum, it's us. And if we do our job correctly, even if people disagree, they'll vote us in. If they disagree, if we handle it poorly, we won't be voted in. So I have confidence in the people that they want a new high school, we do need a new high school, and I think the process has to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some great points my colleagues made tonight, some very good dialogue taking place, and this was a motion that I made back in December, and it was not too well received at that time. As a matter of fact, there was very little discussion. It did not make any headline of any sort. It was just very little dialogue to be had about it, and I get from the gauge of my colleagues, they really didn't have the appetite for it. So I don't know why it's here again. I think that still persists, as you can see from my colleagues speaking. But, I mean, at the same time, Councilor Elliott is not completely wrong by wanting an input from the taxpayers who are paying for this. The cost has gone up about $100 million, and not only that, the reimbursement rate has gone down, as we all know. So it's a significant amount of money. That really, we need to be wary of that, of how we're mortgaging our future at the same time. So I can't chastise him for that, for bringing that up, but I cannot support at this point a binding referendum. I could possibly, if time constraints would allow it, a non-binding referendum question to gauge the taxpayers. That, I think, is appropriate. It's up to this council. This is why we're here. We all come to the realization that we need a new high school. We've toured it. We've all been through that building, okay, more than once the last year or two. Something's got to break, okay? So that is quite clear, and this council has made that decision to move forward. We've already made an investment to do that. So in my opinion, you know, how we serve the taxpayers is by taking in all the information and making an informed decision based on all the information when it's in. That's how we best serve the taxpayers, and that's what I intend to do. So there's a lot that's not in yet. There's a lot forthcoming at the same time, but I cannot support a binding referendum when this council has been voted in to lead, and I think we're doing a good job of that. There's, you know, it's a new process to everybody. There's been some bumps in the road, no two ways about it. The project is such an epic project. It's going to be the largest high school in the Commonwealth. Okay, so yeah, it's all new to us. It's new to everybody. And there's been some challenges, and it will be going forward. But that is my take, that we have to take charge and lead. It's up to us. But again, it's taking in information is how you best serve the taxpayers. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the discussion. By no means am I trying to kick this can down the road. As Mrs. Daly mentioned, we submitted a statement, a general statement, a generic statement, moving forward very, very early in the process about the Lowell High School and the need. first and foremost. And secondly, this isn't politically expedient. We have to vote our conscience. That's why I brought it forward. Maybe I should have brought it forward a couple of months ago. I did file a motion with the clerk. Maybe it should have been years ago, last year. Maybe it should have been a month ago. I don't know, but at some point, I feel that we need to allow the taxpayers to weigh in. And some people may think, hey, this is the way to kill it, or people aren't going to vote for it. I'm not so sure of that. You look at Somerville, or that voted at 70-30. So that is the reason why. And can I read tea leaves and know this was not going to make it? Yes. I'm not taking it personal. I hope my fellow colleagues don't think I'm doing this for any political gain, because that is not the case. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. That's not the purpose. I tried. That's the end of it. We move on to try to sharpen our pencils and to make this make it a viable process. And for those that think, and Mrs. Daly, I understand her point, very well spoken, and I am fiscally conservative, but if we think that any one of these options are a bargain, and please put this on the website for people you can look at the projections for single-family homes valued between $250 and $350. The difference between the annual payment is $44 a year between option 2 and option 4, because I don't support taking more taxable property for this. If you want to look at it, if your home is valued up to $450, the difference again is $44 per year. So this is a very expensive proposition, no matter where you look at it, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you want to slice and dice it, it's very expensive. And the difference is not huge on an annual basis. So if we wanted to start looking at the most affordable, we're talking $44 a year between the two options that are before us. And to me, when we get options back that will bring forth real numbers. These are just conceptual numbers based on square footage, because we're doing demolition assessment in the high school and getting into the walls. And we're doing soil testing at both sites. That's when the real numbers are going to come in. So I am going to be watching by far. The notion that, I support Collie. I support keeping Collie alive because of all the obstacles that seem to have been brought forth out of nowhere. But at the end of the day, we will have to make a decision. I brought this forward because I believe that the people that are paying the bills should be brought into the process, and that's the reason why, and nothing more than that. I just want to respond, and I take everybody's comments. It's not personal. Mrs. Daly and other speakers and my colleagues, it's all very well and good, and it's all constructive in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. If there's no further discussion, the chair senses there's some dissent on this motion and will ask for a roll call.
Councilor Belandy.
No.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
No.
Councilor Leahy.
No.
Councilor Leary.
No.
Councilor Mercia.
No.
Councilor Milonazo.
No.
Councilor Rourke.
No.
Councilor Samaras.
No.
1 yea.
The next motion is by Councilor Elliott, request that the city manager provide a report regarding all tax delinquents in the city and the potential for another tax lien auction. Second by Councilor Leary. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. As we spoke earlier, Mr. Mayor, this has been an annual basis. I know that we initiated this process a number of years ago, and I wasn't aware that it's done on an annual basis, that we get we get the tax liens and we sell them to collection agencies, and that relieves a liability on our books. They pay us and they go collect it at a rate of 16% per month?
Annually.
Annually, okay. So I'm glad to know that this is going to take place. I was actually up in the law department the other day, and the woman, Ms. Titalong, was working on it. So that's good news as we go forward, and to let people know that if you don't pay your taxes, someone's going to come after you, whether it's us or the city. So that's good. I think it's also good for us to get a recap of those individuals that don't pay their taxes, some on a regular basis. And do we still publish those, Mr. Manager?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion speaks for itself, so it'd be good to get an update and to let us know, particularly in light of the article, when I had filed the motion a while ago to have the, rooming houses in our city inspected, and we did close some of them down, and the back taxes that were owed on it. I hope we continue to do that, because there are more row houses, I feel, that need to be closed down for health and building reasons, and I know that's a little off, but thank you very much.
Some councilors might have yelled out, "He's out of order, he's out of order," but
I
it
think
didn't happen tonight, Councilor. Anyways, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion of the evening is by Councilor Leary. Request the city manager provide an update regarding the EDA sign off on the Hamilton Innovation District's new bridge and infrastructure update. Second by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Leary.
Just to know, because we don't have a master developer anymore, just want to make sure we're getting these projects in place, and just a quick update. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor Leary. Request the city manager provide status of the public records request pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 66, Section 10, to the city of Lowell, requesting copies of any inspections and results for air quality annual inspections and hazardous abatement at Lowell High School. Second by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Leary.
Just got to say, Mr. Manager, your folks are incredible, digging through every part of the world to find the documents. The constituent will be pleasantly surprised when they receive something over this past week, but thank you very much. I appreciate it, and they're going to appreciate the effort too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion of the evening is by Councilor Leahy. Request that the city manager provide a report regarding the condition of Willard Street between Humphrey Street and Beacon Street. Seconded by Councilor Leary. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Through you, the manager. I do understand that this is in the works of being repaired, so I just thought it was funny the other day. I was driving through there and I thought I was on a roller coaster when I took a sharp left going straight. But thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion of the evening is by Councilor Leahy. Request that the city manager provide a status report regarding the construction on the Lawrence Street Bridge. Second by Councilor Leary. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Motion speaks for itself. Just some local businesses are looking for start dates and duration and all that. It looks like they're doing some work there. Could I just add one other thing? Maybe it's protocol, but they're building some sort of a wooden 2x4 fence there. Maybe I'm wrong. It doesn't look very up to code to me. Maybe that's the way they do it. I was expecting some sort of a chain link fence so you don't fall down into the river, but if you could just check that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor Samaras. Request that the city manager of the law department outline the procedures on eminent domain cases to include all steps taken before and after proceedings. Second by Councilor Milanazzo. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Mr. Manager, eminent domain is part of option 3, and basically I just want to make sure that in all the options, like option 4, option 2, 1, any issue is considered, and so we can make sure that they're on the table. I know the basic steps of eminent domain and what has to be taken, but since this has been brought up as a possibility of taking over, being part of option 3, I've heard so many versions of eminent domain, what it means, how long it will take, how it will impact the building of the high school, so many different ways. And basically I'm requesting that the law department give us a written outline of the steps that have to take place in using eminent domain, and actually use the model, the dental office as the model. And hopefully this will allow our constituents to understand the actual process and possible costs and implications of all of those moves. So that's the request that I have. I also have another request. Rather than making a motion, at the same time while this is being done, I'd like to request you, Mr. Manager, if it's possible for you to set up a meeting with the owners of the medical building and possibly talk to them about the idea, if they were interested in working with the city on the possibility that option 3 should be selected. So rather than thinking about taking the property with eminent domain, maybe the idea of the property could be something that the city could negotiate with, and the citizen, and it would work out well for the owners of that building and their clients, with the help of the DPD in seeking a new location, and it will work out for our students at Lowell High School. So rather than make a motion, Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor, I mean, would you
There's
prefer a motion?
There's no objection, we'll just incorporate that into the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no objection, okay. Are you all set, Counsel?
Yes.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Counsel Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, over the past 6, 8, 12 months, have you spoken with the owners of the building at all?
I haven't spoken to the owners, I've spoken to their agent, and they have summarily dismissed any thoughts of cooperation, but I'll certainly reach out again.
How many times have you spoken to him, the agent for the building?
3 or 4 times?
Every time it's the same answer?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Council Samaras. Request that the city manager develop an outline which lists the pros and cons to each school site to include an explanation of which steps need to be and are being taken to ameliorate any problems at the 4 chosen sites. That is Article 97, bus costs and timelines, wetlands, sidewalks, traffic, and asbestos. Second by Council Rourke. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Mr. Manager, basically, the motion does speak for itself in a sense what it outlines. But my reasons for all of this is that we've requested, all of us, every city council has requested at some point some of this information from you. And I feel that this information, certain information, has become so convoluted at this time that it's very difficult to follow. At the beginning, when this process started, the OPM that was hired listed all the pros and cons, and they talked about the costs and the reimbursement costs. But every time, I attended many of the meetings, and each time I heard either some very different situations where option 2 needed 30 modules, then several weeks later, option 2 did not need any modules. But with something like that being said, there was always some type of information that was different from the time before. And I know that their presentation, what they've done is an approximation, and they've listed out what they feel are the issues. But when people listen and they hear different information, it creates some difficulty. And then all of a sudden, we had the Article 97, the fields, what is going to work there with the fields. We know there's a water table problem or wetlands problem, possibly Collie. We know there's asbestos in the 22 building. One report I heard was that was going to cost $80 million to remove the asbestos from the 22 building. I mean, you can build a very large building for $80 million. You don't have to worry about doing anything like that. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of the wrong information out there. Right now, our OPM is what they're doing their due diligence. They are going through the walls of the 22 building, and the Lord building, and all the other buildings to look at what's behind the walls. They're looking at the pipes, they're looking at the wiring. They're going into the ground, what's in the ground. They're doing the same thing at Collie Stadium. They are getting good information, and they're going to give us a lot of information. But as a lawyer, you're a lawyer, you're a good lawyer. But as a lawyer, you could request from the judge a finding of fact. And I know, basically my understanding that you as a lawyer with another lawyer, you're presenting your case, you've given the judge a lot of information, but then you say to the judge, I want you to identify what you feel are the facts in this case, correct? Am I in the right ballpark for that?
Yes.
Okay. And so in that regard, I consider you to be our judge. All right, so there's going to be a lot of new information. And rather than have the report from the OPM, I'd like to have that written report from your office, from you, outlining the various steps that you've taken from Article 97, in other words. Okay, what did you have to do to ameliorate that problem? The findings of the fields and things that you have to do. When you talk about the busing, there's one issue is that there is no cost to the busing if we use a three-tier method. However, based on that, what that really means is there's a different starting time. And so you'll have to have that type of, information. So it's a matter of trying to get as much complete information in this and consistent information that you will, and your staff will work with the OPM to try to make as accurate as possible. I know the cost we won't get an idea of the real cost till somebody bids and said, I'm ready to build Lowell High School, and this is what it's gonna cost you. But I know you can make a good, sound prediction as to what the cost should be. And, I liken this council to a jury, in a sense. If you want the jury to make a good decision, it's gotta have good information. And I'd like that information to come from you rather than all the sources. Now, I'm not saying there was anything with intent, Mr. Manager. It's just we had a lot of people making a lot of decisions, what have you. The OPM did an okay job out there. Mr. McGovern's doing a better job coming in because people are saying, I heard this, Mr. McGovern. I heard him last night in Pawtuckaville. I heard this. So he's able to give an answer. No, this is what the administration is thinking about. So with you making the final presentation, I think this will help all of the groups that have put a lot of time into this and will help the city council. So that's a long answer, a long question for my motion, but the thing is, I believe this is important to ensure good information and timely information before we make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do intend on supporting the motion. But I think it's inspired by a combination of a couple things. Now, one of which is a fierce appetite for information, okay, that's not in, okay? I think that this council, as well as the public, who are the stakeholders on, no matter what option you prefer, we all want this information, absolutely. When all this is in, just about, we're able to make an informed decision. And I'm just as anxious as Councilor Samaras. But as to this information that's being requested, a lot of this is being carried out now by the OPM. And so, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, or Mike McGovern, a lot of this is being carried out. So it seems to me like Councilor Samaras is requesting almost a second opinion, and I'd like to hear him give me an answer on that. Sound like a second opinion is requested on top of what the OPM is doing, which could be, I don't know, I'm asking in a form of a question. Could it be additional time and costs when these studies are already being conducted now as we speak by the OPM? So does that stall anything? I'm going to, again, support the motion for the keepsake of additional information. We want all the information, and that's what is the spirit of Council Samaras' motion. But so, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, or Mike McGovern, there's a lot of these things being conducted now as we speak, and we're going to have to pay an additional independent study, and as I guess is what I'm asking, Mr. Manager.
I mean, how I hear what the request is, and I agree, is that Skanska and Perkins Eastman are excellent engineers and architects, but sometimes they aren't very good communicators. So I think maybe the communication would be better, having them give us the actual information, but we convey that information to the city council and answer the questions as posed.
Okay, yeah, because...
So it wouldn't be any additional cost whatsoever. We would just take their information and convey it to the council.
Okay, I'd like Councilor Samaras to reiterate, does he want more or less a second opinion that you conduct, or does he want just the information to come from you? Okay, so that would be great, Mr. May, if you can allow.
All right, thank you.
I'll speak later.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Do we have a timeline when we're getting all this information? And are they on time with their timeline?
We're meeting Thursday. The school building committee is going to be meeting Thursday. The architects and engineers have expressed to us that the weather that has occurred recently has delayed their geotechnical studies at both sites. The traffic study on both sites is a little more extensive far than they originally expected. So they are looking at the schedule and whether they're going to maintain that original schedule of May 9th. We'll probably have a better idea by the end of Thursday as to what the actual timeline will be going forward. We're not saying it's going to be delayed for any extensive period of time, but just maybe a short time if necessary to complete the survey, complete all of their feasibility studies, because we want to make sure this is good information, not quick information.
Right, and then what's our major target after the May 9th? That's, we're trying to make a decision.
The major target
for-
is the May 18th submission to the MSBA for June 28th presentation or vote by the MSBA.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Council Leary.
Just, I think the way I look at Councilor Samaras' motion is on May 9th, you're going to be one part of that building committee that's going to make a recommendation. Part of it anyway. Some of this is not subject to the building committee picking a location. There's other issues like sidewalks, which are really, I mean, maybe it could be part of what your recommendations are, but it's really not, it's something that we would do exclusively. So I think that's really part of the motion. I think what we need to do is, I like to see a matrix of it, kind of listing it out objectively as much as humanly possible, knowing full well that there's subjective information in those objective findings. It is what it is. There's going to be some of that as we get into it. So I don't think the motion's that big a deal, because you're already doing it at the end of the day. I think lining out that matrix really takes away a lot of the misinformation or not misinformation, really, just lack of information once you get it in there. Because I've heard everything, you know, we're going to have sidewalks the whole length of Clark Road and Douglas Road, and that's not going to happen. It just isn't. So ultimately, I think what we need is objective information. Do the best you can to do that. I think it's a challenge. It's not an easy thing because there's a lot of emotions on either side regarding it, but if more objective you can be, the better it's going to be for folks to make a decision and ultimately be able to defend that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Milanoso.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I plan to support the motion, and I'm going to try not to be feisty tonight because I guess it's not becoming. But I want to get it. I want to get it on the record that we all want information. We all want information. But 4, maybe even 5 of my colleagues have already ruled out option 3. They've already ruled out option 3. So, you know, you can provide all the information you want, but 4, maybe 5 of my colleagues have already said no to eminent domain. I can't sit here and understand why they've done that. I kind of think I know why they've done it, but at the end of the day, you know, let's not kid the viewers here. I mean, decisions are being made based upon not what's, in my opinion, the best interest of the students. And again, I'm not going to be feisty. Again, 4 out of 5 have already said they're not going to even look at option 3. So I think it's good to get more information, but at the end of the day, all 4 have to be seriously vetted, all 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Samaras.
I mean, that was the purpose of my motion, is to ensure that all 4 are vetted properly. But when, and I appreciate the questions asked by my colleagues, but the city manager did address what I was looking for. I'm not looking for city manager and his team to replicate in any way the study. But that's why I used the model of the judge for the finding of a fact. Am I correct, Kevin, Attorney Murphy, at this point? You and another jury lawyer, you're going to ask the judge. He's not going to redo the case. He's not going to do the research, but he has the basic understanding and is able to break down what is fact and what is problematic. That's what we need from you, because if we just get the report straight from Skankster as to what, it could further exacerbate the situation by creating more problems. So this way, with you and your staff working with this and the reports that you've given, and I gave you an example of what you used when we asked from the Subcommittee of Economic Development for an outline of the Hamilton Canal area. You gave us a complete report that really outlined what was going on in Dutton Street, and you interrelated everything with each other, and you showed us a picture and you showed us a map, and we had a complete idea of what has been done at the Hamilton project, what needs to be done, that whole process. So I'm looking for a similar answer. I'm looking for a way of giving this group the information in such a way that everybody will say, you know what, there are 4 options that we have to look at. We understand the 4 options, and we can make the best choice for the people of Lowell. And more important, the students of Lowell. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion of the evening is by myself. Request the city manager take the necessary steps to have Swan Street repaved. Second by Council Samaras. Discussion. Council Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some time ago, I did make this very motion, must have been maybe 2 years ago, and at that time, it wasn't repaved because the street is not an accepted street, and it still isn't an accepted street to this day. Now, as Councilor Leahy has this desire to remove all the double poles in the city, my thing is the accepted streets, and it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a long process to do it, and if you know different departments, they're short of help, and this is a long process. So I ask that we do so many accepted streets a year, but it's been falling by the wayside. So the motion really should be, if we could have this street become an accepted street for the purpose of repaving it. We got to do one step at a time, and we're not there yet.
Just as a point of information, Councilor, I remember a long time ago when I was young, I was on the city council, and we did a loan order for $5 million to repave streets, $5 million. And some of those streets that we paved at that time were not accepted streets. And it's my understanding that accepted streets have to be done by Chapter 90
money.
But it does not mean that you can't repave other streets that are non-accepted streets. I gave consideration to the fact that it wasn't an accepted street, but to me, that would have meant somebody's gonna be making another motion 2 years from now for the same thing. So I'm just asking that it be put on the list, and if there's money there, and maybe the manager wants to consider just repaving, a bundle of streets for this summer, with a loan order rather than just in excess of the Chapter 90 money that we would have for this year.
It actually should be repaved. It's a mess. So no matter what you want to do, I just wish that it would be done, because in another 3 or 4 years, someone else might make that motion again. And I hope I'm here to hear it, support it.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that through you to Mr. Manager, if we could just get back on track with the what you just said, the approving the street, accepting the street, because
But it, and the mayor's
we fall
correct.
behind on that, yeah.
In order to use Chapter 90 funds, it has to be an accepted street, but we can use some of the paving money that we've put into a capital plan to pave it.
Yeah, and I think we had, what did we have, so many a year you tried to hit for the target?
Like at least 6.
Yeah,
'cause it's
so if we
really
could try to
late.
get back on track with 5 or 6 streets a year, that'd be great. Thank you.
The bad news is the man in the engineer's office that was doing that was ill for a while, but he's back, and so hopefully we'll get that back on track.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed? The last motion of the evening is by myself as well. Request that the city manager have the parking department look for a parking solution at the intersection of 11th Street and Beacon Street. Second by Council Leary. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. That concludes the agenda for this evening. Now we'll move on to announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. I have two. This Friday, April 7th, the Encore Dance Troupe is celebrating its 30th anniversary at the Sampo Mies Hall, 450 Chelmsford Street, beginning at 6 p.m. This is a fundraising dinner featuring special performances and live music. Also, next Monday, April 10th, the Lowell Cultural Council is holding its annual grantee reception at the CMA 465 School Street from 6:30 to 8 p.m. This reception is free and open to the public, but please RSVP if you're attending.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn by Councilor Rourke, second by Councilor Milonazo. All in favor, all opposed, stand adjourned.
I was going to try to do that.